Okay, Brian, you can go ahead.
Okay, thanks, James. So I want to welcome everybody to the August 29th meeting of the St. Catharines Heritage Advisory Committee. Um, we begin this gathering by acknowledging that the land on which we gather is the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee and Anishinaabe peoples, many of whom continue to live and work here today. This territory is covered by the Upper Canada Treaties and is within the land protected by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Agreement. Today, this gathering places home to many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples. Acknowledging this reminds us that our great standard of living is directly related to the resources and friendship of the Indigenous people. Do we have additions or deletions to be made to the agenda?
No additions that I'm aware of.
The only thing I thought of was if we wanted to do a little summary of the downtown block party.
Yeah, we can throw that under miscellaneous items because I also wanted to give a little update from the museum as well that was passed along to me. So we can throw it under there.
Okay. So if there's nothing else, then I guess we need a motion to approve the agenda. Robert, I saw your hand go up first. So all in favor? Done. Motion to adopt the minutes of the previous meeting. I had a couple of, one question that I had about them and uh, corrections as well. Are we
Okay.
doing the recorded votes now?
Yeah, we've been doing recorded votes for a little while now. I think Andrew
Mhm.
had requested them
Oh,
maybe earlier in the year or late last year because there was a vote where it was kind of split and he wanted to make sure that it was clear to council that how the vote went. But yeah, so we've been doing that for a little bit now.
how come I didn't notice it? Silly me. The one thing that I did notice was, and it just made my toes curl under, was the spelling of Hofstetter.
Uh,
Now it's Hofstetter.
I think I
Uh,
made that mistake in the last meeting, if I'm not mistaken, on the agenda, and I think maybe I didn't catch that to correct it. So I'll make sure that's fixed.
yeah, and where you talk, there was one spot where you're talking about Hofstetter Cook slash Darby Cemetery. I think we should maybe change that to cemeteries plural,
Okay,
just to make
sounds
it
good.
clear that we're talking about two cemeteries and not just one. So those are my gripes about the minutes. Did
Thanks,
anyone
Brian.
else have Gail?
Yeah, I thought they just seemed more formal somehow
Hmm.
than previously, and I wondered if it was a different student taking the notes. It just seemed very much more, the whole sense of it seemed to me very much more formal. And maybe that's why why Brian noticed the nays and yays and that kind of thing. But yeah, I just had a odd sense that it wasn't, maybe you didn't have your hand in it as much, James.
Yeah, so it was the same student. It was still our summer planning student. I
Okay.
didn't comb through them, didn't edit them quite as much as I usually maybe would, just because I was on vacation and then came back and had a lot going on. So
Okay.
I told Lorraine that I would take another stab at them, just to because there was some of the
Yeah.
way that things were worded, especially in the last item. I just want to go back to the video and be able to watch it and make sure
Yeah.
that it's
Me.
accurately,
Okay.
that it's accurate. So. We don't have to approve the minutes today. We can approve them next time if everybody feel more comfortable with that. And I'll make sure that those changes are made and I'll circulate the minutes in advance.
Lorraine, you've got a question or a comment?
I just wanted to thanks James for doing that. To me, I agree with Gail. It seemed like things were maybe shortened in terms of and paraphrased, and it ended up being more formal. Some
Yeah.
of the quotes I thought, or some of the ones that sort of seemed like quotes, weren't exactly what was said.
Yeah.
So I just felt a little uncomfortable with them as well. So if you go back and look at it, that'd be great. Thank you.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah,
I
thank
hate to add anything more to your thing,
No,
but
no, it's I want to make sure that everybody's happy with the minutes. So it doesn't take a lot to be able to go back and take a look at them. So I'll do that.
Hello, everybody. I'm having trouble with Zoom. Can everybody hear me now?
Yes.
Yes, we can, Counselor.
Okay. Yeah, I
We
can't get the video. I had this happen once before. All of a sudden, it says you can't use Zoom because you need to upgrade to the latest version or whatever, which is nonsense. But anyway, at least I at least I can hear you anyway.
Uh,
great.
do we need a motion to that we're going to defer the adoption of the minutes until September?
I don't think it hurts to do that. We can do that.
Okay. Would somebody care to make?
I'll make the motion, if you like.
Okay, thank you, Gail. And all in favor of the motion? Okay, done. Declarations of interest. Do we have any? And seeing none, then I guess we move on to the business of the day. Item 7.1, the park naming policy. James and Councillor Garcia, I guess you're going to be talking about this.
Yeah, thanks, Brian. So at the end of the last meeting, there was some discussion about the park naming policy as it relates to the Williamson Parkette, the new Williamson Parkette, and there was the Kushner Park as well, I believe, that was brought up. So at the time, I didn't know a lot about it. It had just come out, I think, at council that week, and it wasn't something that had been on my radar. So there were some questions about it, and so I've gone back. I asked Tammy, my director, about it to find out what had happened. And of course, Councillor Garcia, he would know a little bit more about it as well, since he's on council and could speak to the decisions that council had made. But unfortunately, the councillor had left the meeting before we got to that point last time. So I just wanted to bring it up again. So essentially, as any guideline or any policy that the city has, council has the right to follow or not follow those guidelines, depending on how they view an issue. Similar thing happens to us with things like demolitions. So, for example, we have a demolition application going forward for 175 Main Street, which the committee addressed last month. That's going to be going to council in about a week and a half. And we've made the recommendation, or the committee's made the recommendation that the guidelines should be followed and that the property shouldn't be demolished. Of course, council, though, has the final say on that, and they could override those guidelines. So a similar thing can happen with park naming as well. So as much as we have a park naming policy in place, and there are certain kind of guidelines that they're supposed to follow, if there are certain cases where they feel that there's a name that they feel definitely should go forward for a park, they're more than welcome to be able to kind of skip those policies and guidelines and go ahead with naming the park as they wish. So I might turn it over to the councillor maybe to provide a little bit more kind of background on those two parks in particular and why some of those choices maybe were made, as long as the councillor doesn't mind.
Thank you, James. Well, you have covered it well. I did, as Gail suggested, and let me know that you had discussed this at the end of the last meeting after I had left, and I did view that discussion. So, number one, you have covered it well in terms of the fact that making it very clear that this is an advisory committee, and of course, council can decide otherwise. And the demolitions are a perfect example. I have been frustrated many times well, at least several times when a demolition was turned down by the Heritage Committee. And then, unfortunately, a lot of the councillors are not as familiar with heritage policy as I am, and they tend to think, for example, that a heritage value is only something that is really old or is something that is architecturally significant, as opposed to having been defined to have heritage attributes under Part 5 or Part 4. So, in the case of those two park issues, the Williamson thing was introduced way back in 2008, but it hadn't been acted upon until recently. And the Kushner thing was just introduced very recently. So in both cases, neither one of the councilors, like neither Councilor Williamson nor Councilor Kushner, knew that this was happening. And when it was brought up, they excuse themselves, even though it's not a pecuniary conflict for them. But there were two other councillors that made those individual motions, and the motions were to essentially waive the park naming policy process, which can be time consuming, of course, to get community input and everything else, and go through the name list. And so that in the case of the Williamson thing, it could commemorate Ethel and her husband that were the lightkeepers and lighthouse keepers. And in the case of Councilor Kushner, for almost 50 years of service to the city, Councilor Kushner, of course, is now not only the longest serving municipal councillor in Canada, in St. Catharines, but in Ontario, and my understanding is in the whole country. By the end of this term, I believe he will have been there 50 years. And but anyway, so that happened, and of course, council voted to approve those two because they were pretty significant and valid. The issue that I see that was missed here is that either the clerk's office or whoever was responsible did not think of notifying the Heritage Committee that this had happened or was happening. That to me is a failure here. We couldn't do anything about to change the fact that the policy was going to be waived in those cases. But because this committee works on developing the list of approved names, and particularly with regards to heritage, and I think the Williamson one is a perfect example of something that definitely relates to heritage. There should be a directive for whoever is in communications to ensure that this committee is informed when something like that happens. It doesn't happen very often, but that's that's the background of what happened, and somewhere along the lines, somebody needs to be notified that when there is a change to the naming policy or a waiver of it, that this committee should be notified.
Okay, thanks, Carlos. Gail, you've got a question?
Yeah, I've got a couple actually. I was thinking about it a lot, and thanks very much, Carlos, through Brian, for taking a look at the video, because I thought it was important that that be done. I have some more general questions about the policy. I remember years ago, I've been with this committee for at least a decade. The senior city planner, Judy Pihat, had made it very, very clear that this was a city policy and that we were just adding names to the list. And I don't think I've ever actually seen the written policy. I'm not sure I ever have. Have any of you? Has
Well, I
anyone?
have heard presentations on it, but
But you
I
haven't
don't know
actually
that
read, yeah. Well, if there is a written policy, could we see that text? Would that be a possibility as the
I'm sure you
advisory
could,
committee?
yeah.
Yeah, through the chair, I can try to track it down and circulate it. Yeah, I'll
Because
do my best to find that.
Judy was very, very clear. It was a city policy and we just added the names that we thought of that had merit for whatever reason. And I also don't remember anything about them having to be dead in order to have a name put on, because I put on Neil Peart and Edward Bertinsky and Austin X on there, and they're still living. You know, Neil Peart is not, but that I don't think I haven't seen the policy saying that the person. I've never seen the policy, the text of it that says, yeah, so I think that's a mistake. And then my other question is, and Carlos is quite right. There's been a real communication breakdown between some offices in the city and us, the advisory committee. And I would like to know where the policy is kept, because I know you referred to the parks one, but I thought it was a more general policy for showing to developers for naming of streets, landscapes, whatever that was of merit, of some merit. And using a historic merit name, but not spelled the same way. So where is it kept? If not in the clerk's department or not in the chief communications officer, Scott Ross? Where is the policy kept?
Yeah, so through the chair, so the parks naming policy falls under CRCS, which is Community and Recreation and Cultural Services. So they handle all of our parks essentially. So they're the ones that would have provided guidance on the policy. In terms of how we, sorry, Gail, what was that?
I'm just not talking just about parks. I'm talking about street naming.
Yeah, so they're
Building
two
naming.
separate. So we do have a very specific park naming policy. We don't have a formal street naming policy in the same way that we do parks. What we do with
Ah,
developers is if a developer, wants to name streets
oh,
as part of their private development, we
okay.
provide them with that list that the Heritage Committee is created, and we pass it along to them, and they can use those as suggestion or for. We basically suggest, if you're looking for names, use some of the names here because we know they're significant to our community. We don't have a formal policy that we can't force them to use those names or anything like
Right,
that,
of
but we
course
do
not.
provide the
Sure.
list to them. So it's just not a formal. We don't have anything formal that says this is our policy on street naming.
So there may not be a text at all then. If it's, but there has to be, I guess, in order for there to be a bylaw that gets waived, there has to be something written, I would think.
So in this case, I don't know if it was technically a bylaw waived rather than a policy. They can be
Mhm.
two different things. You don't necessarily
Okay,
need a bylaw for a policy to
okay,
happen.
okay, yeah.
But I just behind the scenes now. I've been chatting with Amanda Knutson, who's our basically our parks planner in CRCS, and I let her know that we're looking for the parks naming policy, and she's going to send that over to me as soon as she has it. So, so I'll circulate that to the group after this meeting, and but yeah, that's essentially how the naming policy works.
And well, and one more, well, I still got my hand up, sorry, Holly, about it, is, do you think that every city councillor, and I guess Carlos, you could ask this too, is aware of the naming of streets policy and the naming of parks policy?
Through the chair, I don't know the answer to that. I don't know. Councillor Garcia might know a little bit more about the awareness that's amongst the councillors.
Because if the clerk's office didn't know, how do the councillors know?
Well, the
No.
the the clerks, so the clerks would know that there is a policy. In this case, council has opted not to follow that policy.
Yeah, okay.
The only thing that clerks did not do was give us a heads up about it, right? So
Okay,
that's where things kind of went sideways, at
yeah,
least as it
okay,
relates to us. Clerks, I have a really good relationship with clerks, so I think this is just one of those things that falls through the cracks. I was actually just speaking to one of our clerks this morning, so we talk pretty regularly. But I
okay.
think this is just a case where and I don't know the timing as well of this. So the park naming, especially for Councillor Kushner's, the park named after Councillor Kushner, I'm not sure if that came up not abruptly, but came forward and was brought to council very quickly, and so it wouldn't have maybe they didn't think to have time to bring it to us. Doesn't mean that they shouldn't have, but that might be in the case as well. I just don't know the answer to that,
Okay.
unfortunately.
Thank you very much.
To answer, to answer Gail's questions, I don't know for a fact that how many people on council are aware of these two policies to the extent that the street naming may be a policy, as James said. Certainly, we're all aware of the park naming policy because we have had several discussions on it when the question came up of waiving it. So everybody knows there is a park naming policy. There was a discussion about a parquet over by the Welland Canal, if I remember, at one time. You may remember that, James. I don't know, but that was a few months back, maybe even last year or so.
Oh, poor Holly, your hand must be getting tired.
Just have just a comment to make that I I understood when I read in the paper that the Williamson Point parquet was a brand new parquet created, but the Joe Kushner Park was a renaming of a park in the south end. Wasn't it Woodgale Park being
Mhm.
renamed? So
Woodgate, I think.
Woodgate,
Woodgate.
So would there
Something like
be
that.
would there be a different policy then if it's a brand new park or a brand new street and then a renaming of a park? That could be something different as well, right?
Yeah, through the chair. I don't know if there's what type of distinction is made in the park naming policy. I don't know the park naming policy really well, so I don't know if they have a distinction between existing parks versus new parks. But I think one thing that in chatting with Tammy about this is I know with Woodgate, I believe that was it was a park that essentially was built by a developer as part of a development. And so the main concern was, were they going to be replacing a name that had some significance to the St. Catharines community. So if Woodgate was a name that was, like Burgoyne, right? Then there would be some apprehension to rename a park like
Right.
that. In this case, I believe they went back and looked and saw that Woodgate was just a name that a developer had chosen just to name a park, and that it didn't seem to have significance, or at least none that was really strong significance to our community, and so that's why they felt comfortable with being able to rename that park.
Yeah, I was a little surprised with the Williamson issue because I thought that was part of Malcolmson Park to begin with. So it would have been, a little parquet carved out of the whole. But,
Yeah.
anyway,
I hope Walkinshaw Park doesn't get touched.
right.
Yeah, there's another one that's significant. Yeah.
Mhm.
Lorraine, you had your hand up?
I just a couple of thanks and a couple questions as well. So thanks, Carlos, for clarifying that. Thanks, James, for clarifying that. That makes much more sense to me. And I would agree it was a communications gap. And I
Yeah.
think I think that was part of the concern. And I also thought it was a concern for because it was related to the Welland Canal Task Force. The Welland Canal Task Force, which Brian and I are on, we didn't know anything about it either. And so perhaps that could be something we thought of. So, and then, I think that bringing it up has made much more sense. So I just have a couple more questions, just little ones. So, for example, when Gail was talking about, do the counselors know about the policies? And Carlos says, that he assumes yes, or he thinks that they do. I'm wondering what about the significant individuals list? Is that common knowledge? Do all the counselors know that we have created a significant individuals list? So that's my one question. And then with Holly talking about, it being a new park and the signage for the park. On the Welland Canal Task Force, they've recommended, and again, just a recommendation, just an advice, that all of the signage, park signage, and Welland Canal signage have the same logo, the same font, the same style. I know we've been holding off on one of our plaques that we were going to have, one of the mills that we were going to put from a previous Welland Canal. We were holding off on that because we were waiting for the signage to get approved, or to have it developed, a common signage. So, is that sort of something in the works? Is it were people aware that that was recommended before the policy was not used, or was ignored, or not chosen to be followed?
Yeah,
So
through the
just
chair.
one
So
question.
maybe I'll tackle the first or the second question first,
Oh,
because
I
it's
should have
something.
spread them out maybe.
No, that's okay. It is something that Adrian and I have talked about, the whole, because we have a lot of plaques in our city. And they've been made at different times by different entities within the city, whether it's museum, tourism, our committee. It's just we have a lot throughout the city. We're, in a way, we're lucky to have that, but that also creates a management kind of problem, and also a problem in terms of consistency, right? So making sure that everything kind of has same look and same feel. And so unfortunately, and it's the issue that we kind of run into with our committee too, where we make these kind of one-off plaques, and so making sure that those look the same as what we want to do for the Welland Canal Task Force is, it's a lot of coordination. So Adrian and I have talked about it, and it's something that we'd like to see get better. We haven't had a history at the city of having kind of a centralized plaque program, and the resources that are required to do that. But optimally, you'd like to have, the same look and feel, and kind of message, and branding, and everything, right? You want it to all be consistent. So hopefully that'll get better. I'm not even sure who created this plaque, to be honest, like the one that, or the board that's up at Williamson. I don't know who was responsible for that. But yeah, optimally, we'd like to have something that where everything looks the same, and it's the same kind of, St. Catharines feel, right? So, and the first one about the significant people's list, or significant individuals list. I don't know how aware the counselors are of it. It doesn't come up very often, to be honest. I don't know if Councillor Garcia has ever had conversations with any of his colleagues on council about it, but it's not something that really, other than when we do have developers who are looking to name, their little streets and whatnot that they're building as part of their private developments. It's really not something that you hear about a lot in City Hall. So I don't know if the councilor wants to chime in on that and provide some insight.
Yeah, I
Can I
would say that you're probably absolutely right that it's other than myself, very few councillors would be aware of that list. So it just it's if something does come up, then they will be aware. But I would doubt it. And in terms of who designed that plaque, I don't know either. Like I was away, and I actually missed the dedication to the Williamson Parquet because I had another commitment. So I haven't even seen the plaque yet, but I know Councillor Williamson and the two Grantham ward councillors were there for sure, and probably the mayor as well. So
Okay, so I just have two follow-ups. Thanks, Carlos. One is that should we be waiting then? Are we waiting for something that we shouldn't be waiting for in terms of our plaques? If we're holding off on Welland Canal plaques and, city isn't, so then should we? Maybe we should discuss that. And then the second thing is in our communication, and you know how we're talking about, making sure the city clerk tells us, it would be great to be invited as the, Heritage Advisory Committee to any kind of city type plaquing that involves heritage or history. So perhaps maybe that could be even added to what the clerk notifies us about.
yes,
Thanks.
absolutely, and that's what I meant when I said the lack of communication. That certainly the Williamson Parquet, particularly the committee should have been advised because I would imagine many of you would have enjoyed
Mhm.
being there.
Absolutely.
As far as the plaque, the sign, I would suggest that we should address that at our next Welland Canals Task Force meeting and see if staff can give us an idea of when do they think this is going to happen, because I'm a real stickler about consistency. I totally agree that we should have a consistent look throughout. On the other hand, if something has to be done, and if you have something that is waiting, how long can you wait? But the sad thing is that then if and when they do come up with that, then you have to change it. So, but anyway.
Great. Okay, thanks very much. I appreciate all the conversation.
Yeah,
Gail,
and oh, sorry,
oh, sorry.
if you don't mind, I'll just respond a little bit as well to Lorraine. Unfortunately, because the Welland Canal Task Force, I'm not the liaison for that committee either, so I wouldn't want to speak on behalf of Kathleen or anybody that's working on that. But it's something that I know I've been having conversation with Adrian, and Kathleen is involved with them too, about trying to make sure that we're more consistent in the future. Even the plaques that we're going to be doing when the Heritage Planner joins us, the two that we agreed to this year, it's like I want to make sure that those look kind of similar to the ones that you're doing as part of the Welland Canal Task Force, right? But we only have 4 more months essentially to be able to design that plaque, and we might not be able to make those decisions based on what the Welland Canal Task Force is planning on doing down the road, because that decision might not happen within that timeline, right? So it is a challenge, but hopefully we can only get better at it. And there is at least a coordinated effort, or there's a desire to kind of make that happen, right? So yeah, that's all we can do at this point.
Thanks, James.
Gail?
Yes, through you, Brian. Two questions you brought up, the consistency and whether the naming policy is known by the rest of the councilors is a really good, they're all great points you've all made. Well, the first welcome to sign was in Old Glen Ridge, and I was heavily involved with that with my city councilors, and most of the plaques welcome to this neighborhood follow that exact standard. Most, but not all, but they're close, and consistency is really important about that. I am concerned that all city councilors do not know about the significant individuals list. Is there some way through proper communication that they can be given the list, shown the list, told that it exists?
Yeah, through the chair, I I mean, we certainly can make them more aware of it. Counselor, I don't know if the counselor would be able to help me with that in terms of the best way to kind of get that message out to everybody. Because we can send an email to all the counselors and let them know the list exists, but they get so many emails, right? And they might not digest exactly what we send to them. So if the counselor has, perhaps I can chat with the counselor afterwards, and we can try to see if there's a best way of doing that to make people more aware of it.
Perhaps
Yeah,
even just
we,
having it, it on a spreadsheet or something and hand it to them. Old
Yeah,
fashioned.
we do have a PDF on our website that is maintained, and so it would just be circulating that essentially to the members or to the council members.
yeah,
And
we
you
we
say
can
that it's
talk about that separately, James, but I agree, like we get so many communications and how much does each council will look at everything? I can't vouch for, so
well, maybe it could be red flagged or something. Just
mhm.
bring it to their attention. Anyway, thank you very much for all your input, and you have clarified a lot of things for me.
Great.
The one thing that I would say too about the Williamson plaque, like the design of it, and this is sort of direct towards what Lorraine was saying. I don't think that's anything that the Welland Canal Task Force really has to worry about, because we're only commemorating canals 1, 2, and 3.
Mm.
And the lighthouse in Williamson's plaque is on canal number 4. So it can sort of be, I wouldn't be terribly upset if the design stayed the way it was for that one.
No, I just meant that they had said that everything connected at all with all the Welland canals, I thought it was. I know we're doing the historic, but they were hoping that the whole piece would have consistent plaques. That's mainly what I was worried about. And the idea that we were holding off on a plaque and
Yeah, that's right. Saying we had this much discussion about it, should we maybe just have a motion made to receive the information from the counselor and from James?
Yeah, I think that works.
Yeah, I think we should at least have that. So does somebody want to make that motion? Lorraine, thank you. And all in favor? Okay, done. Item 7.2, solar panels. Take it away, James.
Yeah, so through the chair. So last month we had talked about solar panels. I'm not sure if we kind of said we'll put it aside, and some people thought they might look into it a little bit. I'm not sure if anybody had time over the last month to put some more thought into it. If not, it's not a problem as well. I think there were some really good points made last time, and we have some pretty decent guidance going forward. But I just wanted to put it back on the agenda just in case anybody else had some thoughts or came across anything interesting that they wanted to share with the group.
Mark?
Yes, thanks. I did do some research on solar systems on heritage buildings, and I came across like architectural solar panels and some that look like building materials. Like there's so it's like a slate roof, for instance, you can have slate tiles like within a roof. It's not like a whole big panel, but you replace them inside of like within the slate roof. It's just amongst them all, and it looks like slate. And they're just little panels, but more of them to blend in with what's already there, like things like that.
Did you happen to see? I imagine it was maybe just a demonstration of it, or did you see any like actual buildings that had those?
I saw some photos. Yeah.
Okay. Would you
Yeah.
mind passing those along to me? I'd be really curious about them, and
Yeah,
then
for
I can
sure.
just look into it a little bit further because the way technology is moving in that area in particular, it's for solar panels. It doesn't surprise me that those types of kind of materials are available. I just don't know also how readily available they are in a Canadian context, right? So
Right.
I've seen examples from, let's say, Australia or something like that, and it's like, okay, well that's great for the Australian heritage community, but are they easily accessible here? But if you can pass those along, that'd be great, Mark. I'd love to see them, and I can circulate them to the group as well.
For sure. A couple other things. There are some times when, like, I've seen it on like a big church in the UK, just your standard panel, but it blended in with the design of the existing roof already. right? It had the same color, so it wasn't such an eyesore. Or I've seen them on like clay, like red clay tile roofs, and then those stand out like a sore thumb, like things like that,
Mm.
right? I guess it would depend, but then how do you say, oh, sorry, your roof is not that, so you can't do that, right? It's that's a tough one.
Mhm. Yeah, and
Another,
I think.
sorry,
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Mark.
another option for some people would be maybe geothermal energy. Uh, like that is brilliant. That really works too for those types of buildings that where it would be what's the word I'm looking for? Offensive in a sense. Yeah.
Well, and I think too, not every building is the same. Some buildings we might want to be a lot more careful about the installation of solar panels, but other, like for example, one of our lovely churches, right? We might say, let's be a little more careful with that. Whereas a very vernacular building in Port Dalhousie, maybe we might not have as many concerns about, right? Just depending on the qualities and the attributes that are involved, maybe we'd be more careful with some versus others.
Right. And I've seen a lot of examples of, like, say, large churches or heritage buildings that have uh, a flat roof section of their on their property, and those you can't see those from the street or anything like that. So that's an option too. If they have a flat roof, you can put some flat solar panels there.
For sure.
Holly?
I was just out on a walk this morning, actually, and up through Port Dalhousie, Canal Street, actually, just up the hill, past Balzac's, facing the water. There's a large, nice heritage home, and the solar panels are very, very from front to back, the top of the roof. And it's not like it's at the back of the house where you can't see. So that's an example. I know when I drive around, I was looking for some examples that I could share with the committee, but that one was like, if anyone wants to drive up Canal Street and look, that's an example of, it doesn't look great, that's for sure.
Lorraine?
I didn't see any examples either, but I did locate a report from it's from the United States and it's older. It's from 2011 from National
I see
Renewable
them. I've got the mail.
Energy Lab, and there's some tips in there for historic homes and the use of solar panels, talking about the angles of the roof and how you put them on, the color and the reflectivity, give you some tips on visibility. I know Mark had said at the last meeting that maybe not on the roof, or there could be on a different location. So I don't know how that's in the report or not. I just sort of skimmed it, but there is a report from 2011 if anyone is interested. But as I said, it's from the United States, so it's not a Canadian reference.
Yeah, Lorraine, if you wouldn't mind passing that along to me,
Sure.
I can circulate it to the group. And it's always just good to have that information anyways, right? Just in case, the American context is not that dissimilar from ours, right? So
That's what I thought too. Maybe not as similar to like a European model, but it still had some interesting things in it when I was scanning it. So I will send that to you, James.
great, thanks.
Okay, I don't think we need to have a motion to
Oh,
receive.
Gail
any-
has a question.
I just wanted to say that I would look in the Globe and Mail, which I get daily, real estate pages. About 2 weeks ago, they had an 1871 heritage home, and it had solar panels on it solidly. And it didn't seem to look bad. And I was tried to find it afterwards to send you, but I send you too many things. But I wanted you to know that it didn't look too bad.
Yeah, I think the nice thing about solar panels at least is that it's reversible. So you can take them off and it's probably not going to do a lot of damage to the building. It probably won't do any damage if you take them off properly. So that's the nice thing about them, I guess. Like you're not ruining the long-term kind of culture heritage value of it, right? And the short term, at least, they're doing their part to contribute to environmental concerns and stuff like that, right? So it's finding a balance. And I think I think it depends on the building. I think it depends on the materials they're using. And there's a lot of different contextual kind of reasons or reasons why we might say yay or nay to something, right? So I think in the future we'll kind of play it by ear, and we'll have people, as these come in more and more, we'll be able to kind of set maybe a standard for ourselves, or at least some way that we can be consistent, and make sure that that we're not saying no to all these, because I don't think we want that reputation, but at the same time we want to make sure that we're being at least careful and diligent about it. So yeah.
Okay, so I don't think we need to have any motion to receive this information. I mean, we're just providing ideas to James, so I think we can
Yep.
just
And
move
if you
on.
do come across anything, by all means, send me an email. I don't mind getting them, as much as Gail tries to avoid sending them to me.
Trying to
More information
restrain
is better.
myself.
Okay, item 7.3, the significant individuals list. We're talking about Mr. William Bruce wanting
Yes.
added to the list.
Yeah, so through the chair, Mr. Bruce reached out to me last month, and he was keen to be added to the list. And so he sent me some information about himself. I sent you an email with basically he provided his bio. Within his bio, he also had some links to. He has a Wikipedia page. He has, I guess, been involved with some movies and stuff. So he had an IMDb page, just basically kind of outlining some of the work he's done. I explained to him that typically our list is geared towards kind of older people who had been in the community, people who have long passed. We do have some people though who are still with us. Walter Ostanek is on the list, and he's still with us. Ron Sexsmith is on the list, and he's still with us. So it's not a cut and dry. Sorry, we can't add you until you passed away. But at the same time, it's about, is this individual significant to our community, and does the committee feel strongly about adding them to the list? So I'm not sure if everybody had a chance to review what I've passed along. It looks like Mr. Bruce grew up in St. Catharines. He spent his years in school in St. Catharines, and then he moved to Niagara Falls at some point. And he's mostly been involved with he's had some links to kind of the wrestling world, it looks like, and a couple NFL players, and he's kind of been involved with writing and promoting and a bunch of different things. And so I wasn't sure how what people thought, but I think it merits discussion. So I wanted to put that forward for everybody.
So, do we have questions or comments? Whoa. Okay, Mark.
Yeah, thanks, Brian. Yeah, think usually if someone's significant, they can have somebody vouch for them. Just you can convince somebody to nominate you, I suppose. And if you don't have to do, I don't see anything significant so far that he's done for the community, or any cultural significance so far. I know that movie Lost Penny, it wasn't a big film. Like part of that movie was filmed in my family home and backyard, and my brother was in that movie too. Had a role just like he did. I just haven't seen anything in his bio that has much significance for St. Catharines, or to St. Catharines right now.
Holly, did you or Lorraine? I thought I saw somebody's hand up.
I had my hand up, but I think Mark covered it really well. Usually someone is nominated. So I know we don't have a policy that says that, but typically the person is nominated. But basically, I also had my hand up just to say that, just to clarify one thing James said. When James said he grew up in St. Catharines, I was going to add to that, James, that he actually grew up in Meryton. So so I thought that I will probably write an article about him, because that's kind of what would make sort of the Meryton matters. Not that he necessarily was significant to the city, but that he was just a person of interest, has accomplished some interesting things.
Thank you.
Not a great contribution, I know, to the conversation, but I just thought that was kind of a neat thing you might be interested in.
Dr. Bergen.
I agree with Lorraine. I think that Mark summed it up really well. I think it's a little bit self-serving. It just didn't make a lot of sense to me.
Yeah, when we first started to do the significant individuals list, I think the criteria that we had at the time was that the person had to be either born in the city or have lived here for a long time, so they contributed. We said the person should ideally be dead. And then we backtracked on that and we said, okay, living politicians are okay, but everybody else has to be dead. And then when we updated the list again, when Gail and John Haynes and I did it, then I think we did add, living people to the list. And I don't remember what criteria we actually, like what justification we had for adding living people to the list. So in theory, I suppose he could be added to the list, but again, the same as what, Mark was saying, like, he might have done a lot of, writing and film work and so on, but how much of it is really significant to St. Catharines? So I don't know. Gail?
Yeah, I agree with everything that's been said, particularly starting with Mark and going through. I'd never heard of him until I read this, and I thought, this isn't the kind of people that we've been public POE, public education and outreach people have been talking about for a decade. I mean, starting with John Haynes and Brian and I, and then on to Lorraine, and yeah, and we're looking at really people who are well known, like Sexsmith again, yeah, that kind of Ostenac really contributed to St. Catharines because they are from St. Catharines and living in St. Catharines. So I agree with everything that's been said.
Mark?
Yeah, I'd like to. Yeah, thanks, Brian. I'd like to see him be more involved in the community, and if he is, I asked a bunch of people if they knew him, and no one seemed to know him. And a lot of his writing was maybe like not a major. He wasn't running it. He was maybe just an assistant to somebody. And the way he phrased some certain things in his bio, just like he was introduced to a movie by a director or something like that. Well, why put that in? Like anyone can just tell you that, hey, check out this movie, but there was no any significance to that sentence. So I don't know how much is embellished either. It just seems like a lot of name dropping too in his bio. I'd like to see more of him in St. Catharines to do something. That's all.
Okay, thanks. So if we don't have any other questions or comments, then I guess we have to make a motion to recommend him to Mr. William Bruce to the city's significant individuals list. So can I have someone to make that motion?
Brian, can I just add something first, though?
Sure.
If we are going to reject adding him to the significant individuals list, I think we need to state it in a kind of a positive way. James was really good at this, but it's not that it means that in the future, that might not be a possibility, or say just maybe not at this point. James, you
Yeah,
sort of
through
see
the
where I'm
chair,
going with this?
Yeah, through the chair, I can do that when I chat with him. When he first reached out to me and he threw his name into offered himself as the nominee. I told him that the committee might have hesitation, but it doesn't mean that he hasn't done significant things in his life. It's just the committee has a list that they maintain, and the bar is, I wouldn't say high, but it's it's a bar that we try to maintain, and that he shouldn't take it personally if the group felt that he didn't fit on that list. He seemed to understand that. I think he was just putting himself out there, and I didn't get any sort of sense that that there would be any problems if if the group decided, nope, you know what, not him right now, but
Right.
maybe in the future if he does some other things. So yeah, I don't mind providing that messaging to him.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay. So do I have someone to make the motion to recommend him to be added to the list?
So just a reminder, you can make the motion, but you don't have to vote in favor of it. So we do need somebody to make the motion, but you can then vote against it.
So Mark, you're making the motion? And all in favor of the motion? I'm not seeing any enthusiasm for it. So I guess it didn't pass. Seeing we're talking about the list, is that something like updating it, something that the subcommittee should maybe think about in the next year or so? Look at the list again, maybe do an update on it. 'Cause
Yeah, so sorry, go ahead, Brian. Keep going.
we haven't updated that list in what, 4 years, 5 years, something like
Oh,
that?
no,
No,
we got together over coffee at the
at
library.
the library, that wasn't
Yeah.
that long ago, was
What,
it?
Yeah.
2 years
It was-
ago,
It
maybe?
was pre-COVID, wasn't it?
It was the list was revised on March 30th, 2020.
Oh,
So
right
4
before
years.
COVID.
So yeah, right around when COVID started. So
Right, that's right, that's right.
I'm
Yeah.
willing to do that again.
So maybe think about it for, say, the early part of next year. Maybe do it like a 5-year update kind of thing.
Sure.
Something we can keep in mind.
And then bring it to the committee as a whole, or or sorry, can't even talk now. The HAC as a whole, and see if there are any additions. Is that the procedure we're going to follow again?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
That sounds
Okay.
good.
Good.
through the chair, I think the one thing that I'm a little hesitant about is because we do have we have the subcommittee for our for the designations. And so the number of subcommittees we have operating at any given time, just the amount of work that is involved with that and the time that's required. I'm wondering if we might be able to, I wouldn't say avoid going the route of having a subcommittee for the list, but maybe it's something just as a group that we can do as part of the group as a whole instead of having a subcommittee for it, because then everybody would be able to provide some names and whatnot, and then just from an admin and kind of organizing perspective, it's a challenge to have so many subcommittees operating at once, and the designations are to me a big priority because we do have a timeline for those, and there isn't, as much as it's great to update this list, it doesn't have the same urgency that's required as the designation. So that's just my 2 cents on it, but we can come back to it in the new year when we have another heritage planner on board, and we can find out what their workload looks like and go from there.
Yeah. Didn't we do this through the POE subcommittee?
Yes, we did,
Yeah.
We did.
Yeah.
but
It's
there's
not
nothing.
as if we had another subcommittees, established for it.
I would hate to have a subcommittee of of the POE. I think that the idea might be that now that we've raised this, anyone from the board of directors here, or whatever we call ourselves, volunteers, could suggest names that they think we've missed that aren't on the list.
Okay.
They're all history experts of one way or another.
Yeah, and I don't see it as creating the POE has kind of been dormant for a little while, at least since I've been here. And so just the idea that we might have, the POE, we always have kind of plaques that were I know the plaque committee hasn't met recently, but that'll be starting up very soon again, because we'll be working on the 2 plaques that we had for this year. And then we have our designation subcommittee. So all of a sudden, you have 3 subcommittees running potentially at the same time, and that's just a lot of work from the city's point of view. Just the heritage planner has to kind of balance their schedule, and organizing 3 subcommittees and the main committee can be a challenge. So just keeping that in mind, that's all. So if we can avoid going that route, and if as a group we could, just brainstorm, then I think that might be the best way to go.
Okay. Item 7.4, the downtown HCD update. James?
Yeah, so through the chair, this month, I mean, I was away for quite a bit of this month, but there was still work going on behind the scenes. Our consultants are still working on the report. I'm hoping that a draft will be in my inbox pretty soon, to be able to review. So that's great. We're doing a lot of consultation right now. There are a lot of people in the community that have a lot of pretty big concerns about the Heritage District and how it relates to things like financing, insurance, just general kind of bureaucracy, and so there's kind of there's a lot of questions that are going on. So we're having a lot of conversations. Tammy and I were at the downtown BIA's board meeting on Monday, having a really long conversation with their board. And it's just a lot of conversations that we're having, and we're trying to meet with all sorts of different individuals throughout the community to learn more about what the impacts are for things like insurance and financing in particular. One of the great things that's happening is the downtown board is kind of leading the way from a information perspective. They're hosting a seminar. It's supposed to be at the end of September. The date and time hasn't been finalized yet, but they're essentially going to have a panel of 5 people on the panel, and people who are related to heritage. I believe Michael Miernick is one, as an architect who works a lot on heritage. I think Andrew actually, as part of our group, Andrew Humanuck, I think he's going to be on the panel because of his experience with heritage and development. And there's a couple others, somebody from the finance community, somebody from insurance. Basically just an opportunity for property owners and business owners in the downtown to come out and ask questions to people who have actually are living it, and can speak to their experiences. Because it's one thing for me to talk about it, but it's another thing for people who actually on a day-to-day basis kind of live it in their own lives too, right? So that'll be happening in September. I'm going to circulate an email to everybody to let you know when that is. So that way you can come out if you'd like. I'm sure it'll be really interesting, and I'm sure there'll be a lot of discussion around it. And yeah, the work continues. We've also, I can't recall if I let everybody know, but there's a new survey that we provided to just the downtown property and business owners. That opened up on August 1st. It was supposed to go till the end of this week. We were asked by the business community if it could be extended. So we're extending that out to Halloween, actually, to try to get as much feedback as possible, to hear people's concerns and make sure that everybody feels like their voice has been heard, because that's really important. So that's happening. And essentially luckily, because of the decision by the Ontario government to extend the deadline for listed properties to lose their heritage status, because they extended that by 2 years, that gives us a little bit longer runway as well. We don't plan on using that whole 2 years, because if council decides that they don't want to pursue a heritage district, we need to kind of pivot in another direction to figure out, okay, how do we deal with some of these properties that are downtown that are going to lose their status? So we anticipate now that the study is probably going to be done in the new year. And we'll bring it to council in the new year. Originally, we were planning on it being done maybe September, October, but we're going to take this extra time to do a lot more consultation, and see if we can talk to more people and get people to kind of just think a little bit more about how this impacts them, and see if we can find solutions to problems. So we'll be doing that, and then of course I will circulate the report to everybody here. It'll also be circulated to our task force, the Downtown Heritage District Task Force, and the more input we get, the better. So once I have that, I'll let everybody know, and it should be really interesting. I think a really interesting report for everybody to read, because I don't think we've had anything of that depth about the downtown ever in the history of our city. So I hope that it'll be a really good read and that everybody will get something out of it. So that's kind of it right now. There's a lot going on behind the scenes though, so it's a lot of work right now for me, but it's been really interesting.
Okay, thanks, James. Do we have questions about that? No. Okay, so can I have a motion to receive the update from James? Robert, I see your hand creeping up there. So all in favor of the motion? Done. Okay, I guess moving on to miscellaneous items now.
Oh, Holly has a question, I think.
Oh, sorry, Holly.
I just wanted to ask something. I know it's not on the agenda or under miscellaneous, but just a comment, something to ask. I don't know, should I ask now or at the end?
We can include it under miscellaneous.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Oh, just when I was walking today, I was just thinking a lot of things, and I was up by Locke Street and Dalhousie Avenue. And, you know, sometimes we get an application for a property to do an addition or to do something to their home. And we sit through and go through the presentation with the owner and with the architect, and we vote on it and we okay that. and then the property basically sits kind of stagnant, and it sits for quite a while, and you drive by and there's nothing really happening. Is there, you keep as a city, do you keep like a timeline of what's happening once these permits are given to the property owner? Do they have a certain time frame to get the work done, or can it just be forever?
Yeah, so through the chair, the heritage permits that they receive from us, they don't expire. We don't put an expiry date on them. The building permits, though, believe we have the ability to I don't want to say I don't know for sure about building permits actually, as to whether or not those expire at some point. There are things like the building code which need to be taken into account. So if the building code changes, then the building permit there might be issues with that. But essentially, long story short, is that things like financing, things like the individual homeowner or property owner situation, those change all the time. And even things like materials, labor, contractors, all those things are variables that have to be taken into account. And so it doesn't surprise me that there are going to be properties that, they come forward, they have plans, and, nothing happens for a little while. It's usually if there are issues like that, sometimes I'm made aware of them, sometimes I'm not. But if there are any sort of issues in terms of redesign, or if there's problems with the building from we've run into the situation where people have started to explore, doing additions, doing renovations, and they find, oh shoot, we can't make it work because of the state of the building, whatnot. Usually we end up hearing about those. But the ones, unfortunately, where they're just sitting stagnant, it doesn't appear any work is happening. We don't actively go out and try to ask, why aren't you doing anything to your building like you said you were going to? It's just not possible to do that with every property. So yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, Lorraine?
Just following up on Holly's question, I wondered that too. I think that's, a really worthwhile thing to try and get an update on, especially in terms of places that are like Memorial School. When I first started on the Heritage Committee, we spent a lot of time looking at Memorial School, and they came, I think, several times to our meetings, and we talked about, could I gather some things from DSBN, and, what other artifacts did we have? And yet nothing seems to be done on that. So I understand maybe why homeowners, there's no time limit, but is there a time limit on larger projects that aren't, individual homeowners, but in terms of that, or the place in Portaluzzi, when you go over the old factory on the right-hand side, that doesn't seem to be being developed either. So are there any kinds of impetus to get those moving?
Well, through the chair, I think the development industry in particular has had a tough time lately because of interest rates and labor and costs of materials and everything. So construction almost everywhere is down, not just in St. Catharines, but across Southern Ontario. So it's not surprising that some of these projects that you might have heard about maybe pre-COVID or during COVID have kind of stalled a little bit. That's just the reality everywhere, unfortunately. Some of the projects, so for example, like Memorial School, you know sometimes conversations are had with the city that unfortunately we're not allowed to share because they're either in confidence because they just want to talk about certain issues, or it's as part of a what we call a pre-con, which is so if somebody does anticipate coming in for a planning application, they come into us first and they kind of do a first draft essentially of what their proposal is, and we as a city provide comments so that way they can provide us with a complete application later. But we're not allowed to speak to, so if somebody asks us about those projects, we wouldn't be able to say, what those involve or what somebody's doing until a formal application has been brought forward. So unfortunately, sometimes there are conversations that we have, so we might know what's going on with the site, but we're not allowed to share with everybody just because of the privacy and confidentiality that's involved with it. In terms of every project is different as well in terms of where they are in the planning kind of framework and whatnot. So certain ones, depending on when they were passed by council or when they're passed, when they've come to us as well as a planning department, we're able to speak to a little bit better than others. And also things change in terms of the Planning Act and Heritage Act and all the different kind of regulations that everybody has to adhere to as well, right? So I don't know if I can give a kind of blanket statement about whether or not we can provide a lot of information, but I do know that it's an issue that we're facing, and that there are a lot of projects in the city that people were really excited about, and unfortunately we just haven't seen them kind of push through, right? So I do know work is happening behind the scenes, and people are trying to prepare for insurance rates dropping and stuff like that, but can only hope that that happens, right? So yeah. I'm sorry, Lori, and I don't know if that answers your
No,
question
no,
well enough, but
no, I get it. It's just, as Holly said, we spend time on it. We're enthused about it. We're excited. I mean, I drive by Memorial School and keep looking at, is anything happening? So I just wondered, to add on to what Holly was asking, if there's any updates that are possible, but you've answered that, so I'm good.
I'm just gonna quickly say, thanks you, Holly, for raising that, because Memorial School was one that we thought they had a really good plan. We were very enthusiastic about that, as opposed to not being much less enthusiastic about other things. But that one, was a great
That's
one, we thought.
Mhm.
yeah, and through the chair, it's not directly related to us, but so we have a community improvement program at the city. So developers can get funding for certain types of projects, and essentially we had to go to council earlier this week for an amendment, because right now certain projects have you have to complete them within 3 to 5 years of basically getting approval, and because of the issues that Southern Ontario and the world are facing in terms of just in the world, like Ontario and in Canada, with interest rates and materials and everything, we're actually finding that a lot of developers are saying we can't actually, it doesn't make sense for us to get it done within 5 years, because the cost and labor and interest rates and everything aren't working in our favor right now. And so we had to go to council actually to ask if we are able to extend the program for certain developers if they are showing that they're in the process of doing work, but because of all of these issues, that delays have happened over time where they weren't able to meet those timelines. So it's a reality, unfortunately. It's I'm sure developers would love to be able to build if they could, but for various reasons, it's just not making sense for them at this time. So, but hopefully with interest rates it seems like interest rates are dropping, or are going to continue to drop, and hopefully that will help them out. So yeah.
Okay, so moving back to miscellaneous items. There was something on my agenda. Was it register prioritization project? Is that updating the list of structures?
So that's the do you mean the designation subcommittee?
I had it down as item 8.1, register prioritization project.
Yeah, so we're still on 7.5.
Right, okay.
We're on the miscellaneous still. So I think there were 3 items. One was, Brian, you mentioned the block party, the downtown block party.
Right.
There's an update from the museum that Adrian passed along to me that I'll provide to everybody. And then I know before the meeting kind of gave a little bit of an overview about the heritage planner position, but I was going to lump that in here as well. So Brian, did you want to start with the downtown block party?
Sure, we could. It was a really busy day for all of us. And of course, want to thank, Mark and Maria and Robert for coming out to help with that.
Lorraine was there as well.
And Lorraine, although Lorraine wasn't there or I guess you were just there when I was coming in, right? Yeah. So we had a lot of people stop by the desk where James was sitting. I think there's a lot of interest in the display items that we had. Do you have any idea, James, how many people would have stopped at the desk to talk to you?
It wouldn't surprise me if it was about 75 to 100, I think, throughout the day. We were probably talking to one every 5 or 10 minutes at least. So, it adds up, or at least like one group of people every 5 or 10 minutes at least. Towards later on in the day, it got a little quieter, but definitely throughout the middle of the day, we were talking to a lot of people, or a lot of people were coming by, looking at the photos, and then, saying hello and just walking off. But that's okay too. They were engaging with what we were showing them.
And of course, I did 2 walking tours from, starting at the far end of St. Paul, where the anchor is, going down towards, Bond Street. And I think during the course of the day, during the two walks, it was probably about 24 people that joined the walks, and everybody seemed really excited, and they were asking lots of good questions. And even a few people on the tour said, well, how can we take part? How can we join the Heritage Committee? And I said, well, you have to wait until next election, and then we'll have a call for volunteers. So it was a good day, hot too. So I don't know, James, if you had anything to add to that.
No, I just wanted to thank everybody that came out and helped me out because I'd never done an event like that, and it's a lot of work. There's it does take a team to make it work and make it happen. And in talking to the downtown BIA afterwards, Rachel, who's the director there, she was really happy that we were there, and she said that we're more than welcome to come back to any event that they're holding because they really appreciated it. And I think we should put ourselves out there a little bit more if we can. We're a very passionate group, or this group is very passionate about heritage and sharing that. And I think what you learn is that people love this stuff when you actually, we essentially had two boards. One was of old postcards of St. Paul Street. So it had kind of 8 pictures of old St. Paul Street from around the turn of the century. And people loved it. People were looking at them and then looking up and being like, oh, that building's still there. And, it was really, really neat to see. And then the other board was more so about the downtown heritage district and trying to get people to just fill out a survey and ask questions about that. But yeah, people were asking questions. People were really engaged. People were telling us stories about their family history or their history with certain properties. It was just a really fun event to be at. It would have been nicer if it was maybe 5 degrees cooler, but at the same time, it was a lot of fun. So I'm going to keep my ears open for other events like this in the future. Rachel knows that we'd be interested in participating, so I'll let everybody know if there's other opportunities to do this because it was fun to be part of.
Mark?
Yeah, thanks, Brian. And thank you, Brian, for that walk. I went along with you during the first one, and I learned a ton. So I want to say, if this happens again, and if anyone's available, go along on one of the walks. It was, I learned a lot. It was really cool to hear the history of St. Catharines, specifically St. Paul Street.
Okay, thanks. Okay. Museum updates, James.
Yeah, let me just pull up my message from Adrian. Just 1 second. So unfortunately, Adrian's pretty busy right now. So he said he's doing Spirit Walk prep for next week. So he's wasn't able to attend today. So, but he wanted to let everybody know that the Spirit Walks at Victoria Lawn Cemetery run September 5th, 6th, 7th, 12th, 13th, and 14th. And tickets are selling well. So if any of you are interested, you should purchase them soon. And those can be purchased through the museum, online, or by phone. And then he also mentioned that the tourism department has started to install the revised heritage tourism sign panels. You might have seen them throughout the downtown. They're very white and very shiny and very new. So some of those panels have been replaced. They're in the process of replacing them, so some of the older ones are still there, while other spots there are new ones. The installation will continue hopefully over the next few weeks, and they also include QR codes to allow people to scan them and then get further information about tourism and mapping and heritage resources on our website. So pretty nice to see those in place. And Adrian hopefully will be joining us at the next meeting and providing us with a little bit more of an update, but unfortunately he just couldn't make it today. So yeah.
Okay. Any questions about the update? So should we, I guess, get a motion to receive the updates?
Yeah, I was just going to quickly mention that. So a new heritage planner. We interviewed on Tuesday a new heritage planner. I believe our HR department sent out an offer either yesterday or today to them. So I'm hoping that they will accept and that they'll be on board as soon as possible. Hopefully sometime in September, and then I'll be able to introduce you to them at our next meeting. The candidate that we have is fantastic, really experienced, has almost 15 years of heritage experience in a lot of interesting places. Don't want to count my chickens quite yet, but she seemed very excited to work in St. Catharines. She's from Niagara originally, so she was excited to maybe work a little bit closer to home. And yeah, we'll see what happens. But when I chatted with her yesterday, she was excited about the idea. So hopefully she signs the contract and we can get her going as soon as possible, and I can introduce her to you as soon as I can. So yeah.
Okay, thanks. Lorraine?
I have a question that actually goes with the last item.
Mm.
I was reading on that official news source, called Facebook, that there's a new museum coming in Thorold. Has anybody else heard about that? New museum opening in Thorold? That's why I started by saying it's, official news source. But there was some comments about that. So no one's heard anything about that?
Yes, I have.
Oh, okay.
I just read so many online news. I was Thorold today had it. It's yeah, I've read it about it. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
In Thorold today. I get a whole bunch of online Niagara newspapers, actually.
Okay. And I know it's not St. Catharines, but I just thought
Yeah.
that it was interesting.
Yeah.
Um,
You could
wanted to know
probably
more
just
about it.
Google it and find it.
Okay, I will. Did you know anything about it, James?
No, I didn't know anything about it.
I think it's reuse. I think they're reusing another building. I think it's a reuse of a building. It's not a new building.
Okay. Okay,
An
thanks.
old fire hall or something like that.
Okay, I'll look into it. Thanks.
Okay.
Okay, so did we have a motion to receive the updates?
I'll make it.
Gail, thank you.
Yeah, sure.
Yep. And all in favor? Done. Just a couple of little things that crossed my mind that people may not have heard about, seeing we're talking about, heritage related items. Donna Ford, passed away,
Yeah,
from the BME.
yeah,
I'm sure that will be a loss to the Black, history community.
yes. She was
And,
really
I don't know
good.
if anybody's heard there was a partial major collapse of one of the Third Canal lock walls, up
Oh.
behind,
Oh.
I think up behind GM. I think it's the southeast, maybe part of the wing wall, and where the lock gate would have sat recessed into the wall, collapsed right into the channel. So, I mean, I think that's probably Seaway controlled property, so we probably have no jurisdiction there anyway, but it's kind of a shame that we have these second and third canal remnants that really are not being maintained, in any way, and they're just crumbling. And they're such a major part of the past for this area. Historical, economical, whatever. Um. Anyway, so I guess we're down to item number 11 now. The next meeting.
So we didn't have a designation subcommittee meeting, so that's fine. We're once the heritage planner is up and running, we'll get that subcommittee back up and going. I know Brian was doing some research on some properties on St. Paul Crescent. So those are hopefully the next ones that we'll tackle from a designation perspective. But the new heritage planner has a ton of experience in, assuming that they're on board, has a ton of experience in evaluating properties. And so she's going to be great for that type of work. So hopefully when she gets on board, assuming she gets on board, she'll be able to get things started, and that committee will probably reconvene. Maybe October might be the next time they meet, but we'll get that. We'll make sure that everybody's aware of when that meeting is, so you can have it in your schedules.
Okay, sounds good. So the next meeting, I guess, is September 26th. Same bat time, same bat station. And if there's nothing else, then I guess we should have a motion to adjourn for the day.
I just wondered if, James, on the next agenda for September, if you could put something about the Welland Canal Task Force. There likely will have a meeting of the task force at the, I'm wording this incorrectly, so hang on a second. There's going to be a presentation of the task force initial plan, and they asked us for suggested dates, and it looks like it will be happening in September before the next meeting. I can't say the exact date. I've been given an idea of when it may be, but it's not out for public release yet. But I could report on what happens in the presentation to council from when the task force, gives their plan about what they're suggesting for the 2029 celebration.
Yeah, not a problem. I can make sure that it's added.
Okay.
And if you want to send me an email a little closer to the date too, just to remind me, that would be appreciated because I'll be spending most of September kind of getting our new heritage planner on board. So I just don't want it to slip through the cracks. But yeah, we can add that
Okay.
for sure.
Thanks.
Gail?
Just another thing is on that same day, the Historical Society is having its meeting at 7 o'clock. It's our annual general meeting, followed by, so I'm gonna have to be there as a board of directors. And also, it starts at 7, and I hope that our meeting on the same date, I can get out of here by 4:30, that's all. And the speakers are Tim Johnson and Jim Hill from the, talking about Indigenous Niagara. They have a new book out. So that would be of interest to anybody, I would think. If you're interested, please come out to that meeting.
Okay, thank you, Gail.
7:30 starts the meeting itself, but the AGM is half hour before.
Okay, sounds good.
Thanks.
So, my clock on the wall says that it's 3:53. So can I have a motion to adjourn for the day? Lorraine, thank you. And all in favor? Done. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Great. Thanks, everybody. Have a good long weekend, eh?
Yeah.
you too.
James, can you stick
Bye-bye.
around for just a minute? I have to ask you a question.
Yeah, that's okay. Not a problem.
Okay. So you know how we're having the designations, everybody else doesn't have to stay. I just wanted to ask a favor. But so your designations, if it's one of the Meriton properties, that you're talking about or doing research on, could I possibly maybe do a little bit of the research, then I could use it in an article?
Sure.
So I just thought, I don't start teaching now till October. So I'm not teaching the usual September course at Brock, but I just thought, if it would be helpful for you, and then I could use it for a future article, because I am starting to work on the fall one.
Yeah, you're more than welcome to help with it. Brian mostly has been doing a lot of the research on the properties, as you'd expect.
Yeah,
And then I was doing some as well on properties that that he wasn't. Basically, we were tag teaming them, right? So I was
Right.
taking some, he was taking a few. But yeah, we have properties in Meriden. Like there's the keg, there's an industrial building next door to it as well that's listed.
The
There's probably
Riordan Mill.
yeah, I think so. Yeah. So there's a couple different properties though that we might be able to. I'll look at which ones are in Meriden, and I'll send you a list of them, and then we can go from there.
I've probably undoubtedly written about every single heritage building in Meriton. So I
Yeah.
probably have information, but I could do some more information, get some more information. I know Brian walked me through how to do that previously. And I mean, he might want to add to what I find out,
Yep.
but then, and then I wouldn't feel guilty about using it for an article too, whatever.
No,
I
I think
find
it's great if we can, it's killing two birds with one stone
Yeah.
essentially, right? And
Yeah.
luckily a lot of those sites are pretty high profile sites. I feel like
Yeah.
their sites have been written about, and
Yes.
there's, the museum has information about them, and yeah.
Yeah.
So if you want to help, I mean, by all means,
Sure.
you're more than welcome. And
I'd love to. Yeah, I'd
so
love to.
hopefully that group will start up again in October. With me taking having the other position,
Right.
I've had to kind of put that on the sidelines, unfortunately. But I know Brian was doing a lot of work behind the scenes,
Right.
because the properties he's working on right now are the St. Paul Crescent ones that Andrew has, and
Right.
so and I think there's 4 addresses there. So he's really working on 4 properties right now at once.
Okay.
But yeah, we'll start it up again in October, and I'll make sure you're invited to the group.
Okay, could I have the name of the one before though? Because I start teaching in mid-October, so if I could start working on it now, is
Yeah,
that
okay.
possible?
I'll
But I mean, you know what I mean? I know I don't know the total procedure that you guys know, so I'll still want to come to the meeting and we start to tell you what I found out, and then you can tell me what works and what doesn't.
I'll give you the list of all the Meriden properties, and then you can decide which ones you want to do.
Is that okay with you? Is
Yeah.
that okay? Okay, okay. I mean, or if you want to just tell me one, that's fine too.
No, I'll give you a bunch, and you can, sometimes
Sure.
if you have a lot of information about one and it's easy to,
Yeah.
finish it, then why not, right? So,
Yeah, because I have written about all of them for the Meriton Matters, but you want more information, I know. So
yeah.
okay.
Okay, awesome.
Okay, and I
I
just
will
wanted
send
to
you that
thank-
email soon.
And I wanted to thank you for being so wonderful.
Oh,
You
no
are
problem.
you're like so appreciated. I hope you know that.
Well, thanks. We're technically still on YouTube, so that's
Oh.
that's now public knowledge, but
Whoops.
that's okay.
You want to
Thanks,
delete
Lorraine.
that, but no, you're just so wonderful to work with. How's that?
No, I appreciate that, and you're only as good as also the committee you're working with too. So
That's
that's the reality of the situation. So
Okay, all right.
yeah. Well, thanks, Lorraine, and we'll
Thanks.
chat again soon.
Okay, dearest. Okay, talk to you later.
That's okay.
Bye.
Yeah,
Bye.
bye.